You're now live, Your Worship.
Well, thank you very much, Kayla. I want to welcome everybody to our special council meeting. I'm just reaching here in my bag to make sure that I have my voting cards with me. So I just want to make sure I have them. Anyway, this is a special council meeting here on Thursday, October the 14th, 2021. And so I want to acknowledge that we have just a kind of a short agenda. We're going to be going in camera in a moment with a resolution, and then we'll return after the in-camera session to pass a confirmatory bylaw and adjourn the meeting. Just before we start the meeting, I do want to acknowledge a loss in our community. A very tragic event happened in our community, and we lost Bob Giffen. He is a very active farmer and a great community member, and certainly a centerpiece of the Giffen Apple Empire. And we are very, very sorry to hear of his passing. And so we're thinking of him and his family today for sure. All right, Council, let's get started with our agenda. I'm going to call for the approval of the agenda. Recommendation be it resolved that Council of the Township of Fairview hereby approve the agenda dated October 14, 2021 as presented. Can I have a mover and seconder? Ms. Deneen and Ms. Broderick. Oh, Tom. Hello, Tom. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, just maybe by way of clarification, either now or when we go into in camera, it occurs to me that one of the topics in the in camera now will possibly, depending on what direction we go and what we're asking of council, maybe items that are already in the open environment, and depending on what we want to talk about that item, it may or may not meet the standard of discussing them in camera. So I guess we have two options, given that the subjects are now in camera. I just want an understanding that that we're cognizant of the fact that there may be a part of the agenda that we may then decide to discuss later, or we may discuss not to get into it. But let's be clear about what has to be actually discussed in camera.
Absolutely. That's exactly the objective. It's clearly laid out that I'll read the motion to go in camera, but it does include the S239-2 of the Municipal Act, item F, which is update regarding NEC and potential impacts to the municipality. And certainly that if there are any items from that we can discuss in the open, we will do that.
The reason I mention it, and a council will appreciate it, it's a bit obtuse to public, I realize, but the reason we mention it is we always try to be transparent and accountable on this, and one of the subjects we're approaching that threshold where we're going to be doing more in public on the subject than we have been in the past, and I don't want I want us to at least recognize that there may be, our discussion this afternoon may lead to the fact that that we may want to decide at the end of the meeting what will be discussed, further communications to the public after, like we always do.
Okay, so Tom, I'm just going to ask you to consider that at this point, I'm asking for approval of the agenda. I have a mover and seconder, and the next item would be the closed session recommendation. And so we can have further discussions at that point. Included in the recommendation to go in closed session is also to discuss any items that come into open session. So directions. And so we can discuss further there. But procedurally, as you brought it up, it is a procedure. We are at the approval of the agenda. Is there any questions about the agenda? All right, seeing none, I'm going to call the motion. We have a mover and seconder. All those in favor? And thank you. And the motion carries. Agenda approved. So item 2 is disclosure, pecuniary interest, general nature thereof. Anybody with any disclosures during this open session? Thank you. Seeing none, we will, if there's anything comes up, as always, please bring it forward and we'll talk about it right away and deal with it appropriately. Item 3 is the motion to go in camera. So I'll read the full recommendation. I'll look for a mover and seconder, and then I can ask Tom if you'd like to speak. Closed session recommendation be it resolved, the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in accordance with S239-2 of the Ontario Municipal Act. It's item F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. It's in regards to an update to the update regarding the Niagara Escarpment Commission and potential impacts to the municipality. And a second item is development contract negotiations. Can I have a mover and seconder on the motion as presented? Yes, Mr. Broderick, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Questions, comments on the motion? Tom, you want to continue?
No, I think I've made my point that we have,
Okay.
as long as we can recognize that if we do get into an area where it is already public or shortly to be public, that we make that call. In the just in the interest of getting forward, let's just do it, and then you'll.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think just for full clarity, Tom, the public have access to our agenda online. There it is. I printed it off for my purposes. And it clearly says the agenda items that we're going to be talking about, and item B is identification items to rise in open session. So we can identify items in camera. We'll talk in camera about them, and we'll discuss what items can be brought into open session. And that'll be by approval of this council. All right.
Yes, but just so you understand, but the agenda that we have in camera has a little bit more detail. Okay, so for the purposes that we always have done, I understand what we're doing, but I want to make sure that we don't object to coming out of in camera if we want to talk about something that should be open session.
Yeah, and of course, we always have to be very careful when dealing with in-camera issues, that's because confidentiality of the corporation is critical when it comes to these items. So that's why council can decide if there are any items that need to come out into open session.
Right.
All right. Anything further on the discussion? The motion to go in camera. I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? No? Okay. Motion carried.